There we go. Now it says it's on air. Hello. Welcome to Behind the Scenes of AV Rant. This is definitely behind the scenes, recording episode number 617. And yeah, last week worked out using two computers like I used to a long time ago, which makes this behind the scenes version a little bit more sucky because I tried to screen share like a couple of the most important photos, but definitely I'm focusing on the finished version, which is on a second computer. That's where my attention is. So you have been warned. This is behind the scenes. This is by no means a polished version, and if there's really important images, I'll try to screen share them briefly here on the behind the scenes, but no promises. I make no promises because this is not the full version. Full version usually posts on Wednesdays. So if you want to see everything, our heads side by side and the audio cleaned up and the images that we're talking about, look for that, the completed full video version. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
I'm looking to see how many questions we have.
16.
Yeah.
Many of them shouldn't be super long answers.
Good. Well, I'm just telling you, at 12:30, I'm done. I gotta go. I gotta be someplace at 1.
When is that?
That's an hour and 40 minutes from now.
Okay. Well, short podcast again. You can go whenever you please.
I can go. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And yeah, yesterday was Remembrance Day here in Canada. You have, Veterans Day in the U.S.? Yeah, Armistice Day in the UK.
Yeah, completely. I'm sorry for the veterans that are out there, and I do, appreciate your service. I just always forget your holiday. Like my wife.
Well, it's not exactly like a celebratory holiday. It's a solemn holiday.
I know.
Important recognition.
I forgot it existed until my wife said, "How comes there's no mail?" And I'm like, "There's no mail?" And then I actually was wondering why the garbage hadn't gotten picked up today, and that was because yesterday was Veterans Day, so it pushed everything back because today's usually my day. But
well, in recognition of that, certainly want to thank everyone who's made sacrifices for the freedoms that we enjoy in the countries that we live in. So yeah, it's an important day. Remembrance Day is what we call it in Canada. So that was yesterday. We're recording this on Tuesday, November.
I like Remembrance Day. Yeah. I think that's
or 2 days ago. It was 2 days ago. It was 11th. It was on Sunday. It was November 11th.
No, was it?
I'm all messing up. I was thinking today.
I thought it's on Monday. Veterans Day is on Monday.
Well, because everyone got the day off yesterday because it was the Monday, but the actual day is November the 11th in Canada.
Okay, well,
11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. End of World War I.
Oh, okay. I figured it had some significance.
That's how we mark it. That's when the Treaty of Versailles was signed, and yeah,
that's a good one.
It is.
All right. There you go. All right, this is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to www.avrant.com and leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant Podcast, YouTube.com/AVRant. You can contact us directly, Rob at AVRant.com. His Twitter is at First Reflect. I'm Tom at AVRant.com. My Twitter is at AVRant_Tom. But definitely, if you want your question answered, and we will answer it, question@AVRant.com is your number one go-to resource.
Yes, the email is the best place to send things by far. question@AVRant.com.
Yeah, hit us up on Facebook and then follow up on Twitter and then hit us up on Facebook again and then follow up on the email. Just send the email. Just send the email. Make Rob's life easier. That's what I try to do.
It is easier to gather things.
All right, we want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, you support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is by going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. We have Sam this week who did that and left us a PayPal donation. PayPal takes their cut and your credit card information, or access to your PayPal account. We don't see any of that, and then they give us some cut of that money. So we want to thank Sam for his donation.
Yeah, Sam, thank you very much for that PayPal donation. We appreciate it.
Those monies will go into our coffers to help pay for our hosting fees and other things. We also want to thank our 75 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon is a service where you can sign up for a monthly donation to your content creator of choice or choices. If you have more than one that you would like to support, the minimum is a $1 a month, so $12 a year. The maximum is infinity. We're just looking for that one infinity, and we're gonna come to
waiting on that.
When that infinity guy or gal shows up and we receive those monies, we are going to be doing the podcast from your home. It will be nothing but you for 2 straight hours.
Infinity dollars could probably persuade me to do that. Yes, so thanks very much to our 75 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast. And yeah, that's a monthly subscription if you would like to sign up. So $1 a month is the minimum, and we're very appreciative of everyone who's done so over there.
If you can't support the podcast financially, we completely understand. But if you do figure out some way to support us, let us know, and we will mention you on this podcast. So we want to thank Jeff, who decided to go with our advice on 2 fronts. He called AV Science, and they are offering the JVC RS540, which is the same thing as the X790, I guess, projector, for $3,800. And shipping is included in that price. So while we cannot promise you will get that price, we can promise you will not see that price on the website. So you want to call them. So he placed this order, let them know that we had recommended them. He's hoping the slow HDMI handshakes won't bother him too much, but he'll console himself while he waits for 30 seconds for it to switch from one HDMI input to the other, with having saved $4,200 versus the NX7 model if he finds himself getting annoyed with that long wait. So $4,200.
You can amortize the waiting period.
I was going to say
across that money.
30 seconds.
It's a significant number of times that you can wait to console yourself with $4,200 that you did not spend. But yes, congratulations, Jeff. That's a really nice projector. I'm pretty sure we're going to be mentioning it again at some point in this podcast. So yeah, that's great. And happy to know they do have a good price and shipping included. That's a lower 48 states, of course, is where that applies. But good stuff. Congrats.
All right, in the news, this comes from our listener, Carl. Disney's forthcoming streaming service has an official name now. It's Disney Plus.
It is. That is the name. Disney Plus.
So bad. Why?
And it's a plus symbol.
It's a plus symbol too. Like plus what? What's the let's make this equation work. What's the other side of it? You can't just plus nothing. So it's not plus though. It is a different thing. It's not like you get Disney and this other thing. It's like you sign up for Disney Plus, you get all of their movies plus a streaming service. Like, do they send you all the discs? You get a free.
It's just their streaming service.
Free access to their parks for as long as you're in the service and the streaming service, because that's what the plus would be.
What if they use Dolby Vision and not HDR10 Plus? Wouldn't that be ironic? I mean, that's probably what they will do, because I don't think they're going to use HDR10 Plus.
I was going to say, no one's using HDR10 Plus to begin with.
Amazon says they are, but yeah.
Oh, well. Yes, if you really want your HDR to be not synced up with the audio, let's just get Amazon Prime.
I mean, Amazon uses Dolby Vision as well, so I guess they just don't care.
Yeah. Hey, if we're going to do something poorly, we might as well do all the things poorly. Apparently, this Disney Plus will launch in late 2019, which is no coincidence, since that is when their contract with Netflix expires. And they announced 2 live-action series featuring Loki in one of them, which I think they announced a couple of weeks ago, and Cassian Andor from Rogue One and the other. I thought they also announced Scarlet Witch was going to do one.
I don't think that's been officially announced. I'm pretty sure that's rumored. So I didn't see an official announcement on that one yet. But yes, well, I guess I won't spoil anything, but interesting choices for characters, let's say, given their current status of
deadness.
Yeah, there you go. You can spoil it.
What's the spoil? If you haven't seen Infinity War by now, and it happens in the first 2 seconds of the movie. And then Rogue One.
Yep.
I mean, it's been out for a couple of months.
A little bit more than that.
Exactly.
A couple of years.
All right. Also in news, the legendary comic book creator Stan Lee has passed away on the 12th, which was Veterans Day here, the day after Remembrance Day in Canada. And he was 95. Now, his health, I think, had been going for quite some time. And because I remember a couple of years back, or maybe it might have been even as recent as last year, they filmed a whole slew of cameos. And I'm like, ooh, that's not good. I hate to say that, but I think I even said on the podcast, I'm like, oh, that's probably not, that doesn't bode well for his health. So, I, like many of you who have, grown up reading comic books, watching the original Spider-Man series with Stan Lee's voice on it, Excelsior and all that. It's a sad day. It's a sad day. I do have some mixed feelings because I feel like there was a lot of stuff like with Jack Kirby and how Marvel was all, how they treated their writers and creators, and how many people got absolutely churned by that company, eaten and not paid their fair share, I think. But he certainly was an icon, and he will be missed.
Well, the influence of Stan Lee, I mean, it really can't be overstated. He's tremendously influential. I mean, look at the rise of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Even if you aren't into comic books proper, if you're listening to this podcast, it's pretty difficult to imagine the current state of theaters and cinema and home theater without a lot of the creations that he was certainly involved in. So more than that, I mean, what a legacy that he's leaving behind. But more than that, I mean, everyone, and this isn't just like, you know how oftentimes after someone has passed away, people have nothing but nice things to say. But while Stan Lee was alive, people had nothing but nice things to say about him, how friendly he was, how generous he was with his time, that, you know, when young fans would come up to him, he would spend minutes with them, you know, talking about what they want to do and what they want to create, and nothing but encouraging and friendly to everyone. That's all anybody ever had to say about him. So a great person, a wonderful legacy he's leaving behind. And a life to be celebrated, as much as we might be sad at his passing right now. Certainly it'll be a celebration of his life. And Excelsior, what else can you say?
What else can you say? Excelsior, that's right. Emotiva is having a sale that they said they were never going to have again. If you remember, was it last year? Was it last year, or was it the year before that they said that they're
pretty
never
sure it was
doing
last
sales?
year. They said they won't be ever having sales ever again.
All right. Well, I just got an email literally right before this podcast that said, from Emotiva, we're getting in the gifting spirit, earn an Emotiva credit of up to $400. The $500 purchase, they'll give you a $100 reward on your next purchase.
Yeah. See, that's how they're. It's the language. It's the
sale. Shut
very specific. You're not getting any sort of price discount on what you're buying right now, so it's not technically a sale.
It's technically exactly a sale.
Yeah.
Shut up. It's a sale. It's a sale.
I guess they found out people like it when prices go down.
Oh my God. Did you not shoot yourself in the foot by saying you're never having a sale again, and then the holidays rolled around and everybody's having sales and you're not, and your sales are staying flat or dipping, and you're like, I wonder what we can do about this. Oh yeah, I have an idea. Let's have a sale. Oh well, so we can have a sale. Well, we'll just we could do a little.
That actually did remind me on the Emotiva front, because it's almost November 15th, and guess what is not coming out?
Is it one of their processors or one of the upgrades to one of their processors? Because it's usually one of those two things that's not coming out.
That 16-channel RMC1, it's not going to be coming out on November 15th. In fact, there is a post on their very own Emotiva Lounge forums saying RMC1 coming to 2019. That is not November 15th, 2018. But apparently, the upgraded HDMI board that they put into their XMC1, which is still awaiting its Dolby Atmos update, which I swear, remember the guy he was like, should I wait on that or just swap it out for a Marantz Pre-Pro, which was the AV8802?
Is that months ago? Years ago?
That was 3 years ago at this point. 3 years people have been waiting. But yeah, apparently that HDMI board upgrade has not gone smoothly. People have problems, and that was the basis for the HDMI board in the RMC ones. So like, well, we can't release it this way.
We like to give... Rob really likes to give Emotiva a hard time about this, but the reality is, in order to make something like an amp is one thing. One dude on a workbench with some tools and some parts can put together an amp. I can't do it. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying that it's doable by one dude. Building a processor is not a dude or a dudette.
Oh, and then getting it mass produced.
Oh yeah, it's not. It is such.
No, it's a tremendous undertaking, and we like Emotiva. We love their amplifiers. We continue to recommend them all the time. The only thing that has ever bugged me about Emotiva is announcing products, giving them a release date, starting to take pre-orders, accepting people's money, and then not delivering the product for 3 years. I am not okay with that part. So just that is easily fixed. That is a choice to just say, or in fact, it's a choice to just not say that you're making a product that isn't ready to be sold yet. Just wait until it's ready. That's all you have to do, and then I'll be happy.
I just wish they'd get out of the processor game altogether.
Well, there's that.
Yeah, they should. I understand why they did it. I understand why they do it. There's people who want it. There's people, and I think there's lots of happy customers. And if you're a happy Emotiva customer with their processor, and you're like, I don't need Dolby Atmos, you know what?
Well, yeah.
Great, fantastic.
Absolutely.
I mean, once they put a product out, it's usually pretty good. But stick to your integrated amps, your 2-channel stuff, as far as
and your actual amplifiers, which are the
your
bread and butter.
Right. Yeah. All right. Some comments here. Jason on Facebook initially asked why his PS4, which is connected via optical toss link to his receiver and HDMI to his TV, is switching to 2-channel PCM output whenever he is watching a physical Blu-ray disc. Everything other than Blu-ray disc was outputting 5.1 signals just fine. Turns out that a recent firmware update must have reset the audio settings on his PS4, not the system's main audio output settings, mind you. There's like 4 different audio places in that thing.
There's at least 2.
Yeah, my
2.
brother has a PS3, and my autistic brother has a PS3, and it keeps one crapped out on him, and another one's crapping out on him. So my parents are like desperately like, oh my god, PS3s cost so much. I'm like, yeah, because they don't make them anymore. That's called supply and demand. They don't make them anymore. Like, oh, what are we gonna do? Can we upgrade to a PS4? I'm like, it won't be backwards compatible. Why not? Let me explain to you about chips and how chipsets work and how.
Just don't even explain.
I already tried it. There's a lot of blank looks, but my new modus operandi, or my standard operating procedure, is my dad texts me with a question about the PS4, and I just wait until he Googles it, because it's a pain. I mean, it's like there's 5 different menus up there. There's no way I can walk you through this on text. I will have to hunt and peck for the right menu. Anyways, so not the main audio output settings, mind you. No, the audio output settings that can only be accessed once a Blu-ray disc has started playing and you press the options button during playback. Jason only vaguely remembered how he got to those settings and had to adjust them in the past, so he figured someone else might also benefit from the reminder. Yeah, PS4 is on PS3. I mean, has been the only box I've had in recent memory that will like, if you don't use it regularly, it's like, nah, we're factory resetting. Yeah. You don't want to use us? Screw you. We're changing all your settings. I'm like, wait a second. How come it's doing this? And it will lose connection, like my Harmony remote, which has a it's supposed to be
Bluetooth connection. Yep.
Nope. You don't use a PS3 in a while, it forgets that right away. It's the only machine that I know that does that, and that the menus in the PS3 are ludicrous.
Yeah, well, the PS4 is not a tremendous improvement on that. Quite similar on the audio output adjustment front. So yeah, there is the weird thing. You actually have to have a Blu-ray disc in, have it actually playing, then you press options, and you get an entirely separate audio menu that lets you choose bitstream output from there. So yeah. Good.
All right. Kevin on Facebook enjoyed our take on the Viva Audio Credenza horn-loaded speakers that he asked about last week. He still loves how they look, but didn't realize how ridiculously expensive they are. But to be fair, the one article that mentioned their price said 250,000 euros. So not quite the $300,000 that we said last week. That's pretty close.
It's pretty close, about $280,000 US dollars. So
if you have $280,000, what's 20,000 more?
I had rounded up, so let's be fair.
I've tax and shipping. So he figures he could get his dream speakers from JBL Synthesis and have them custom crafted into a cabinet if he had that sort of budget. Yeah, you probably could. You could probably build a whole house around the stupid things. Jordan on Twitter knows people often ask for suggestions for demo material, so he wanted to recommend the often mentioned Master and Commander and the not so often mentioned Den of Thieves as great showcases for surround sound and impressively low frequency effect. I have never liked Master and Commander. Never.
It does get mentioned quite a bit.
It does.
As
and
demo material.
I don't know what, I mean, maybe the one time I watched that, I was like, I mean, yeah, it's got some booms, but what's the big deal? I didn't really think it was all that impressive, but I would be willing to give it another shot. I would not watch the whole movie. I would watch whatever the scene is that people are talking about.
Den of Thieves, I don't know at all, so that's good.
That a video game? Is that a video game? I feel like that's a video game.
No, it's a movie.
Den of Thieves?
Yeah.
What's it about?
I have no idea.
Are there thieves? They live in a
thieves?
cave someplace, maybe?
If there's no thieving, I'm going to be disappointed.
It's probably a romantic comedy. All right, Josh. Josh has a Denon X6300H and a Samsung KS8000 4K TV and a JVC X790 projector. 790 should do 4K, right? Should accept.
Oh, it definitely did. That's the one we were just talking about.
If he leaves the HDMI output set to dual or auto dual, he doesn't get any picture on either display. If he manually sets the video output to monitor 1, everything shows up on the flat panel just fine. If he sets the video output to monitor 2, everything shows up just fine on the projector. But dual audio gives him nothing.
Yes.
Is there a better solution for having to manually change than having to manually change the HDMI video output settings every time? So what's the reason for this? Is it the frame rate? Is it 60 hertz versus 30 hertz or something like that?
No, I mean it must just be that the television and the projector going back to the Denon, the Denon is saying, okay, I've got 2 displays and whatever his sources are.
Right.
Apparently, both of those displays, even in their standby modes, must be producing enough of a signal that the source device is attempting to handshake with both and says, well, I can't, so you get nothing. You get a blank screen on both of them until
because
you tell
one's
me...
off. One's off, but not off.
Right. Not like off, but not physically unplugged.
Right.
Right. It's in standby. So this is not the... So we've had scenarios before where it's like, okay, if the television is in standby and the projector is on, that works. But if the television is on and the projector is in standby, that doesn't work. We've had that scenario before. And in those cases, I have suggested attaching whatever device it is that causes the problem to the Zone 2 HDMI output, because you can turn the Zone 2 on the AV receiver off completely, and then the source device will definitely only see one display when Zone 2 is off. And then when you turn Zone 2 on, it'll connect to whatever display is attached to Zone 2, and the other display, when it's in standby, was not causing a problem. That works if you got the scenario where, it works one way with one of the devices in standby, but not the other one. But here, he can have either display in standby. It doesn't work for either of them. And it doesn't give him an image either way. So the whole Zone 2 solution is not going to work in this case, because as soon as he turns Zone 2 on, even with the other display attached to the main HDMI output of the Denon in standby, apparently the storage device is still going to see both displays and attempt to handshake with both and give you nothing on either of them. So I can't suggest doing the Zone 2. So the only thing I can think of, and I don't think it's terribly convenient because it's not a remote control, is using like a physical HDMI splitter.
Right, where you just press the button.
You hit a button and it like physically moves a piece of metal between 2 HDMI ports. That would allow you to have one output from the Denon into this little physical HDMI switch. Sewell makes a nice one for $25 that passes, all the highest bit rates and all the forms of HDCP and all that. And it's just a physical switch moving back and forth, but you have to physically press the button. It's not remote controllable. So I don't know if that's any help whatsoever, because
the easiest solution for this is a Harmony remote.
And creating a macro.
That's the easiest solution for this, is the Harmony remote. Yeah. If you get a Harmony remote and you program a macro, so you're like, watch the projector, it's going to do this, all the stuff it's doing. Watch the TV, it's going to switch to monitor 1 or whatever one it is. Yeah. That's the solution.
And you would have to make sure you remember that. Like, for example, I would make sure that by default, you've got your Denon set to monitor 1 only, and that's connected to your flat panel. That means you could turn on the flat panel and get to the menus or press the macro button, to make sure, and switch it over to monitor 2, fire up the projector, and that should now work on the projector. And then I would probably always want to make sure when I'm done using the projector that I press the macro button to switch it back to monitor 1, because I wouldn't want to have to turn on the projector just to confirm.
You could probably do that with the off command. The off command automatically does that.
The off on the Harmony just turns everything off. Oh, I see. But then if you put in a command in the off thing, then it would always try to switch HDMI inputs. I don't know if it's discrete enough.
You always wanted to switch to monitor 1
at the end when you're done.
You should be able to do that. That's the last thing it does before
Yeah, it might take a little bit of tooling around in the Harmony
it's
setup.
better than pressing a physical button.
It's better than having to go dig through the menu every single time or having to get up and go press a physical button. Yes, but yeah, I don't have a better solution than that, because if both of them are this way, it doesn't matter which one is in standby. Neither of them is going to give you an image ever if they're both receiving a signal from dual HDMI outputs. Then yeah, even the Zone 2 solution doesn't work. Sorry, Josh, there's not really a better way.
Yeah. Galen has a TV that is behind a two-way mirror in his master bedroom with the TV off. It looks just like a mirror when the TV turns on. It outputs enough light to be seen through the two-way glass. When the TV cool set up, but being behind the mirror, the sound from the TV is blocked. You don't want to use sound from the TV anyways. So he's looking to install a pair of in-ceiling speakers. He asked first, which in-ceiling speakers should he buy? Keeping in mind that this is for a bathroom, so there might be some humidity to consider. Dude, they put speakers on boats all the time. So there's no reason why, any outdoor speaker should be 100%. And in fact, the humidity you're going to put in this room is nothing compared to, well, at least Florida humidity, but nothing compared to, rain, snow.
That's right, yeah.
So yeah, you just need an outdoor speaker.
Yeah, there are definitely weather-resistant in-ceiling speaker models, and surprise, surprise, Outdoor Speaker Depot sells in-ceiling speakers that can be used outdoors.
Oh my God.
Really? In high humidity environments. So
do they have ports in the back for little animals to make homes in?
Well, they're fully enclosed ones. That wouldn't be an in-ceiling, right? That'd be a full speaker, which...
I know. I always thought that outdoor speakers should have ports.
Definitely not. Definitely not. But these,
if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm making fun of a very specific speaker manufacturer. Please, in the comments below, identify said speaker manufacturer.
There are more than one who do that.
Really? I've only seen the one, so you know which one I'm talking about.
Yes, we do. But yeah, as far as in-ceiling goes, Outdoor Speaker Depot definitely does have it. Now, the ones that I like would be the ICE 640 WRS, because they actually have one called the ICE 640, which is a regular indoor in-ceiling speaker. It's having the WRS, I don't know, weather resistant system, maybe? I don't know, something like that. But WRS is on the end of it. The ICE 640 WRS or the ICE 840 WRS if you want the 8-inch version instead of the 6.5-inch version. But right now, those are out of stock, but they're like, yeah, there's more coming in. It's like a 2-week wait at this point, they're saying. So if you're willing to wait that amount, that's a really good value. They do have a less expensive one, just the ICE 600 WRS, but that's got like a pretty crappy tweeter. So I would wait the 2 weeks. Yeah.
The TV installed in the small alcove behind the mirror, 24 inches high, 36 inches wide, and only 13 inches deep. He needs something to power the in-ceiling speakers that can fit in the space along with the TV and also be remote controlled through the mirror somehow. What do we suggest? Okay, wait a second here. Remote control through the mirror. It's long. I mean, it depends, I guess, where the IR receiver is, but you can put the IR blaster on it if you really.
And I assume he has some way of remote controlling the TV right now.
Right.
I would
so
think.
Usually, yeah. So I mean, there's all kind of little amps that can do this, right?
There are. I mean, surprisingly, not as many as you might think. But
didn't we just talk about that Amazon one that?
Yes,
that should work for this.
That's one answer. Would be the Amazon Echo Link amp, because that, of course, you can control with a app on your smartphone, which would totally work. And that would also give you access to all of their wireless streaming features. It also gives you a dedicated subwoofer output if you happen to want to do that. But of course, you don't have to. The only thing there is that the Echo Link amp is $300, and maybe you don't want to spend that much. It's certainly small enough physically. No problem there. One option, most televisions have an audio output that can be variable, meaning that it just uses the television's existing volume up and down controls, and that varies the output out of its RCA or 3.5 millimeter audio jack. And if you have a television that has that, then you could just use one of our favorite, the Dayton APA 102, because that's only like 7.5 inches deep. And it's $90, so it's very affordable, got plenty of power, especially just for a pair of in-ceiling speakers, and that could totally work if your television has variable audio output, but not all televisions do. So it's not a guarantee that that's going to work. So one that will work for sure, regardless of what kind of audio output you have, and if you don't want to pay $300 for the Amazon Echo Link amp, would be Monoprice's Unity amp, which we mentioned last week. This is actually it's got like the mounting thing, so you can mount it right on the Visa mounting holes on the back of any TV. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
how small that is. It actually also has a dedicated subwoofer output if you want to ever add a subwoofer. So I like that feature of it. And then it's got optical audio in, 3.5 millimeter in, and regular RCA in. So whatever type of audio output your television has, this will handle it. It is $180, so it's not super inexpensive, but
Super small though.
it's super small, very convenient, has all the features that you could possibly need, and it also comes with an extension for the IR receiver.
Right.
So as long as you can get that little IR receiver somewhere where you can get the signal to it, it actually comes with an IR extender and a little remote. So you can program any universal remote to control it and use the
Usually
little
the
IR
TV
extender.
remotes too will also
That's
give
right.
you the ability to control something like that.
That's right. So I like that monoprice unity. I think that's the good solution.
My God, it's 1,000 degrees in here. I might have to go open that door. I'm so used to being in here with the door closed that I close the door, and my Ecobee is not sensing the sensor that's in here, so it doesn't know I'm in here, and it's like 95 degrees in this room. I'm
You
roasting.
and your Ecobee, what a tale.
It's just far enough away. I wish I would pay more if they would give me a better stupid sensor thing to work through more stuff. All right, Peter. Peter's in the UK, so keep that in mind.
Mhm.
Peter's looking for a new TV to go in his family room. He has a dedicated theater, so it's not the primary movie watching TV. This is mostly for TV shows and streaming during the day when the room is bright. Nevertheless, he wants good HDR performance, preferably with Dolby Vision support, and good black levels. He's mostly looking for around 55 inches. He'd be willing to spend upwards of £1,500. His wife would prefer a budget of around £700. You guys gotta get together on that one, and they both probably be fine if the final decision landed somewhere in the middle. So we'd like a low, high, and middle recommendation for our reasons for each. Do they sell TCLs over there? And then are they cheap like they are here?
So TCL is now selling some TVs in the UK, but not the 600 series that we like. It's their lower tier edge lid only series are what they're bringing over there to begin with. So yeah, and they don't sell Vizio in the UK. So our top value choices aren't really available, and the ones that are top value and do Dolby Vision.
They're going to have brands that we're not familiar with at all, though, because I mean,
sometimes they do. Yeah,
in Australia, they had a couple of brands. I was like, "Who is that?" Like Hisense and stuff like that. I'm like, "Who's Hisense?"
Hisense is here in the.
I know, but they weren't when I left.
Right.
They were when I came back. When I got to Australia, I'm like, "Who's that?" And there was other ones over there whose names I don't remember. So I mean, so we got our main brands, and we're just going with Samsung and LG and Sony. Those are the three.
Yep, those are available, and I mean, there are certainly options that are in there. Now, so I'm going to go right for the one that I think you should get, and that is last year's B7 OLED from LG. Because so it's $1,300 on Amazon UK. I don't know if
exactly in the middle.
I don't know if you can find it less. Well, it's under $1,500. It's not the maximum. It's definitely, and it's not quite twice the price of what your wife would like to spend. It's a little under twice the price.
With tax, it probably is.
But it's such a good television.
I'm not saying it's not.
And I mean, well, yeah. If you can get that. Get the B7 because, the B8 is available now for £1,500 in the UK.
You're saving £200 on last year's model.
You're saving £200 by going with last year's model, and there's exceedingly little difference between the two. In fact, the B8 uses the Alpha 7 processor instead of the Alpha 9 processor, and the Alpha 7 is essentially exactly the same as the processor that was in the B7. So there's exceedingly little difference between the B7 and the B8. So save a couple £100 and get the B7. Now, why would he not want an OLED that costs less than a Sony LCD? There's really no argument. I mean, there is the Sony in the North America.
Brighter, right?
What's that?
Sony would be brighter, I guess would be the argument. That's the only argument I can think of.
Super worried about burn-in, which don't be. But if you were, over here in the States, we call it the X900F, but over there they call it the XF90. Exact same television, but yeah, the Sony XF90 is available for £1,420, so it's more expensive than the B7 OLED. So let's go down. What's less expensive? I would have to point you to a Samsung, which means you're not getting Dolby Vision, but that's really not the end of the world. The Q6 FN, so that's their entry level in their QLED televisions, their LCD televisions from Samsung. That is £1,000 in the UK.
Okay.
These are all Amazon UK prices, so you might be able to find for less or whatever, but I'm assuming Amazon UK is fairly representative. Now, the Q6 is edge lit and that, but, going up anymore makes it more expensive than the OLED, so it doesn't make sense. And if you really want to get down to close to that 700 pound price point, for 750 pounds, there is the NU 8000 series from Samsung. So that is like the top of their non-QLED models. So it doesn't have quite as wide color, it's not quite as bright, the contrast isn't quite as good, but it's only 750 pounds if you really got to get the price down.
Right. Yeah, I guess I like the OLED out of those too.
I mean, it's so much better. It's so much better than
I mean,
all the others.
I guess the two I would present your wife would be the Samsung, the Q1, whatever that was, and then the OLED, and because there's a 300 pound difference,
right? 300 pounds between 1,000 and 1,300, and the Q6 is not as good as the OLED, so spend that much.
So he says he also wants a new Onkyo AV receiver. He says it's the house brand with 4K HDR and Dolby Vision pass through to power his 3.1 Yamaha speaker setup. Any suggestions? I mean, I understand that's a house brand, but it's only 3.1.
So just about anything, really.
Anything will do these days, So I mean, if it does it have to be Onkyo? Because you could probably save money going. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you.
I don't know if you could. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all going to be quite similar. Because the model that
everything passes all this stuff. Anything that was made in the last year or two is going to pass all this stuff. That's the Dolby Vision. That stuff you don't have to worry about that. It's powering 3.1 speakers. You don't have to worry about that. I mean, room correction. I wouldn't worry about that either. You got 3.1. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, not too much.
You're doing much with it. So I just get literally what was on sale.
Yeah, I mean, I jumped to the TXNR 474. 340 pounds on Amazon. So a house brand. What is? I'm not sure what he means. Like where he works, that's what he can get, maybe, or something. I don't know.
Or maybe that's just the brand they've always owned.
The brand they've always owned. I'm not exactly sure what he meant by that phrase, but whatever. If you want to stick with Onkyo, I don't see any reason to spend more than the 474. It'll do all the things you want to do. So, yeah. All
right, let's go move on to Rob M. It's different than you.
It is.
It doesn't sound different than you. Starting, I mean,
all Robs do this.
Apparently, Rob started with a 5-bay Synology NAS unit, network attached storage.
Attached storage.
I'm getting it. Over time, he added 2 additional 5-bay expansion. It sounds like you units, and now has. If you have questions for the podcast, Rob, just ask them. He added 2 additional 5-bay expansion units, so now he has 15 hard drives using Synology's hybrid RAID, giving him about 95 terabytes of storage, and he's running out of space. Sir, you have a problem.
Sounds like a mix of 4 and 8 terabyte drives, most likely.
Yeah. 95. How do you run out of storage? This is, what?
When you're backing up Ultra HD Blu-rays that take up 66 gigs a piece. That's how.
Well, okay. Can I just say something? I had a friend who did. I found out he was doing this by kind of stumbling. I went to his house and he had his computer out and there was a bunch of stuff there. He would go to Redbox, rent a movie, and then rip it to his drive and then return it.
The rent, rip, return. Yep.
That's stealing. It's stealing. I'm sorry, it is. Don't do that. It's stealing. I felt very bad. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, since the hybrid RAID allows you to mix different capacity hard drives and replace drives on the fly, one option is just keep upgrading with higher capacity hard drives. Of course, Synology offers other NAS units that can house more drives and expand to as many as 180 drives, but they're kind of pricey. You mean you didn't already spend a bunch of money? Or could he go a bit nuts and go for the backup pod with enough space for 45 or 60 hard drives? What the heck is a backup pod?
So the backup pod is there's a place called Backblaze, which basically they're a subscription service where they'll store your content in their clouds. But they're like, hey, we came up with this way of making 60 hard drive NAS units that fit into server racks, and maybe somebody else wants to buy them, so you can buy their rack unit things. They don't supply the hard drives.
I was going to say, they supply the hard drives as well.
Nope, they're between $4,500 and $6,000 just for the unit, and then you have to populate all the hard drives on top of that price. So that is not cheaper than Synology. It's just that the enclosure itself can hold a lot more hard drives than any individual Synology unit can.
How big is this box?
Oh, it's big.
It looks big.
It's enormous. Well, think about 60 hard drives in there, man.
Okay,
Potentially.
Oh, you got to buy all this stuff separately?
Well, you can. So they have a thing where they sell the back pods, but right now that site is like down. I don't know why. Shop is currently unavailable.
So the total parts list is like $3,400.
Yeah,
just for the parts for this thing.
They do actually list the parts if you want to buy it all separately and put it together yourself. You can save some money that way. It's still in the thousands. But you know what? So are the super high capacity Synology units. They are also in the thousands of dollars. So he is like, if I'm going to replace something that can hold 15 hard drives and be expanded, he's into thousands of dollars.
Yeah. So what are our thoughts on what you should do to address this rapidly increasing local storage needs? Dude, you should just contact Amazon and use their cloud storage. You're practically a service at this point.
Or the Backblaze guys, I guess. But the problem is that if he is using it for movie backups and he's streaming it off of his NAS, you don't have the bandwidth.
Yeah.
It's not going to stream Ultra HD Blu-rays at 150 megabits per second. So my first thought, and this is always my thought for my own storage needs and anyone else's, is you keep what you have and you basically just start a new NAS. Because rather than replacing wholesale what you already have,
right?
I'm like, well, you've run out of capacity on what you have currently. You could swap out drives for 12 terabyte drives or whatever and keep going that way. But I would just begin a new NAS. You can have two NAS, like even if you're using, say, an NVIDIA Shield or whatever as your Plex server, you can have it looking at two network locations at the same time. It's not a problem to have two NAS units on your network and just be looking.
So should you buy one of these pod things?
Well, I mean, how much are you going to go up to 45 or 60 hard drives? I mean, I guess if you are, it could make $5,000. It's craziness.
Well, I mean, if you buy, so
a tough time.
If let's say he bought that, then he took all the drives out of what he's got and put it into there.
Put 15 drives into there, and then just kept adding to it.
And then took the Synology RAIDs
that he already has
and sell those to help offset the price somewhat. I mean, it's not going to be a lot.
It's definitely not going to be Are you ever going to get to 45 or 60 hard drives? Because that's.
Well, I guess that's what the real question is. The question is, how long did it take him to get to 95 terabytes?
Right.
Did it take him his entire life and he is 60? Or did it take him the last 2 years? In which case, he should probably buy the pod thing and just keep
be done with it. I don't know.
Just keep everything he has and just start adding drives to that thing.
I mean, the other reason I kind of like just keeping what you have and then adding more is that whatever we're doing, I mean, our requirements for bandwidth only keep going up, not down. So you keep older, smaller files with lower bit rates on your old stuff, and you because if you buy one NAS unit now, like that's it. You're stuck with whatever processing power and bandwidth it has, and if 5 or 10 years in the future you find out, I need something with more processing power or higher bandwidth, well, now you're stuck with that. You have to replace the whole thing wholesale again.
Right. So if you're saying if he got the pod and then
if you got the pod, I'd still keep what you have.
He got rid of all the Synology stuff, then and he put everything in there. Then he decides he's going to upgrade to 8K 2 years from now.
Right, exactly. Now you're stuck with the pod, and you can't. So I'm sort of in favor of buying what you need as you go. Giving yourself some headroom, but not this amount of headroom. This seems like too much headroom.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
I can get behind that.
Yeah, I'd look at like the 12 bay Synology units, which can be expanded with other 12 bay expansion units. They are over $1,000, but they're not $5,000. Right. And I'd keep what you have. I'd keep going.
All right, Carl would like a recommendation for a pair of headphones for watching TV and movies. Comfort is the number one priority, but obviously sound quality needs to be top notch. He's willing to spend as much as $500. He'd like a wide recommendation, a wireless and a wireless recommendation. What would we suggest? So, Audio Technica just came out with an M50 Bluetooth version.
Okay.
So if you've ever heard us talk about the M50s before, M50 AT, whatever it is,
ATH
M50.
M50X would be the normal wired version.
So there's a wired version, and then now they just came out with a wireless version, and all reports are that the wireless version are very good.
Okay.
All the ones I've read have been that they're very good. They're Bluetooth. They have all the latest, not all the latest codecs, but they have like aptX and the ones that get you CD quality. So anything above that's ridiculous, anyways. So they are, I think, $199 right now. I think they're brand new, so you're going to probably find them for $199. And the wired versions, you're going to find them as low as like $120.
Yeah, usually around $150 for sure.
Yeah,
but sometimes lower. Okay.
So those are the two. That's what I would recommend.
All right. Now, for me, for a wired one, I jump straight to Sennheiser. Now, he said he wanted sealed, right? He wanted closed back.
Did he say that? He doesn't say that.
No, it wasn't. It was in the email. Sorry, I didn't put it in the thing. He did say that he wanted sealed. So their HD 598 CS, which the C, I guess, is closed or something like that. Anyway, because the regular HD 598s are now the HD 599s. Those have open back, but they have a sealed version. So it's the HD 598 CS. That's the sealed version. They are the most comfortable headphones I've ever worn. Just as far as their wearing comfort design, and the sound quality is really good too. $175, so certainly under $500. And they come with a nice long 10-foot cord and the larger plug that would plug into an AV receiver. So very appropriate for TV or movie watching. For wireless, my concern there. So Sennheiser has their specifically wireless ones that like come with its own RF base.
Right. My brother has those. I think I have a pair of them floating around here someplace that my mother-in-law used before she passed.
Right.
And that's the one thing I inherited. They're like, Tom, you want these headphones, right? I'm like, yes. Of course I do. I have
so those ones from Sennheiser, they're not using Bluetooth. They're using their own proprietary radio frequency signal, but almost all of them are open back. They do have a sealed back design, but it's not really the greatest. So I would kind of look to some sealed Bluetooth headphones, but my concern is that I don't only want aptX, I want aptX low latency because I don't want a lip sync delay. And aptX low latency really is low latency. It works really well. So I don't know if those Audio-Technica M50s, if they have the low latency version or not. I'm not sure.
Right now.
Yeah. But one that I know that does and has pretty nice sound quality is Plantronics. They've got, what was the name of the thing? Backbeat Pro, I think. Yes, Backbeat Pro from Plantronics. Oh, Pro 2. Don't get them mixed up. Backbeat Pro 2. $200 for those. They do have Bluetooth aptX low latency, and then you will need a Bluetooth transmitter, and this is whether you go with the Audio-Technicas or these Plantronic ones. I like the ones from Aventry. Aventry, they have a Bluetooth transmitter called the AudioCast, and it is aptX low latency as well, and it can actually transmit to 2 pairs of wireless headphones at the exact same time. So that's nice, and those are only like $50. So yeah, that's what I'd go for on there. Find anything out about those Audio-Technicas?
I'm trying.
Finding ones that support low latency that's not as common as I would like it to be honest. I wish there were more that worked with the low latency version, because it is very effective. It makes sure that you're not getting a weird lip sync problem waiting for the latency of a regular Bluetooth connection. aptX is decent, but it's still enough that you would notice a bit of a lip sync delay.
Now the one I saw, it says aptX codecs.
aptX,
I don't know what that means,
but not aptX-LL. I don't know. Yeah. The Plantronics will work. That I know. Yeah,
I'm still looking.
It's still going. Do you want me to move on to his second question?
I found it. Hold on. Shut up. I'm very close. I'm on the Audio-Technica website.
Research on
features.
The fly. Thrilling podcasting.
Podcast material. This is why you go. This is why you come here. Specs. Wait, I missed it. Specs. Downloads. I pressed features.
This is especially riveting in the video version where you get to watch
sure it is.
looking down at his screen and keyboard.
It just says A2DP,
Yep.
AVRCP, HFP, HSP. That's what it says. It doesn't say anything about.
I don't know
There
if
it
it's
is.
got the low latency
It
though.
doesn't look like it has a low latency.
Doesn't look like it.
All
There
right.
you go.
Anyhow, I did want to say about that the M50s in general.
Yeah.
One of the things that are, first of all, their sound quality has been commented on numerous times, so we don't really need to talk about that anymore. They are very good, but build quality is what really brings them to the next level. I mean, these things are bulletproof.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I first got them, they were not the most comfortable headphones I'd ever worn. They did require some break-in. They were just a little tight for me. But then, after wearing them for a bit, they quickly became the, very comfortable headphones. I don't think any headphones I own are comfortable enough to wear for 5, 6, 7 hours at a time.
You got to get some of those Sennheiser HDs.
I'm gonna have to try them then, I guess, because I even my Oppo's PM2s they are very comfortable, but I would not want to wear them for longer than 2 or 3 hours at a time. All right, Carl. Sorry. Next question for Carl. He wants our take on his power protection situation for his projector. He has a whole house surge protectors on his main electrical panel for his HVAC system, and he has a small trip light outlet protector for his projector's power cord up in his attic. He's careful to never use the projector when there's a storm in his area. Does everything look okay, or should he be using something different? You need battery backup, dude, because it's not just storms that knock out power. It's branches falling down in a little bit of wind. It's some stupid squirrel chewing on a cable and electrifying itself. It's a failure of a transformer that has nothing to do with anything else. You cannot predict when power is going to go out. So looking at what he's got here, and I mean, this is all surge protection stuff, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, the whole house surge protector that's on your electrical panel, another one on your HVAC unit, I'm totally in favor of that, but that doesn't really impact your projector whatsoever. Right. And then the little triplet, I mean, that, I don't know, is that doing anything?
I mean, it's going to sacrifice itself, and hopefully it'll block whatever surge is going through, but I wouldn't bet the farm on it. Yeah. I wouldn't bet like $2,000 projector on it, that's for sure.
No. So, now, would you want to put any kind of battery unit up in your attic, though? That's another question. Not really. I certainly wouldn't. Yeah. I mean, they've got, like APC has that nice small form factor, the lithium ion one, which could potentially work just in terms of space and that, but I still wouldn't want to put anything with a battery up in the attic where it could potentially get crazy hot in some houses. So yeah, I want you to have a battery backup.
There's just a plug in the attic.
It's just a plug. It's just a plug.
So I mean, there's some other issues. I won't say issues, but other things going on here as well. I mean, is there a way to get to? Because he's obviously got attic access to all this stuff.
Right.
First of all, you're not supposed to just have a plug in your attic. Sure about that. Pretty sure that's not up to code. There should be the plugs in the room. No. And you plug in, and then there's a Romex in the attic. So the outlet should be installed near the projector, and then you run that Romex back to a whatever it is, a female outlet or a male outlet or whatever it is at the bottom near there, so you can plug it into your
battery backup.
No, if you've got this much access in your attic, dude, you really have no excuse not to do this. You should be. You should
have an outlet, even if it's one that has the male outlet near wherever your projector is. That can definitely be done. Yep.
I mean, you can just see this outlet. I mean, I don't know if you guys can see it on the YouTube yet, or maybe you will when it's finished. But I mean, it's looking a little sketch already. I mean, it's a little rusty up there. I don't know. I mean, this is not up to code, I don't think. So,
yeah. I would change that. That would be my advice.
Greg. First up, Greg says, thank you for recommendations last week on his $3,500 Canadian basement home theater. The basement is Canadian and the money is also Canadian.
That's right.
To clarify, since we wondered aloud about his budget for other things like seating risers, a seating riser and acoustic treatments, he does have a separate budget to cover seating and decor, and the riser for the back row is already included in that. So that's good. All right, good. On the topic of room treatments, the floor would be carpeted. He was planning on building the riser himself so they can serve double duty as a base trap. His wife is into crafts, so they were already planning to make some DIY panels together with images printed on the fabric. His plan was to have a couple of panels on each side wall for the first reflection points, a large panel on the back wall, and thick curtains on the front wall for that classic theater look, plus the curtains over the hallway entrance to cover the one window. Do we think that's a solid plan, or should we be doing something more as far as acoustic treatments go? I mean, I like having panels behind the front speakers as well. I mean, if you're gonna have curtains there anyways,
if it's thick curtains that are now like open, so they're bunched up and all that.
Yeah,
that's pretty okay. I mean, what is a panel behind that really gonna do?
It's not gonna hurt anything. He doesn't have any corner trapping, but which would be the one thing that would stand out to me.
But he's gonna have the big bass trap in the form of the riser, so
no.
Yeah, I think you're pretty okay on. I might
overall. I mean,
yes,
I can nitpick.
Sure.
There's
right.
I'll tell you what, if it were my theater behind the curtains, I would put some panels right behind the main speakers. I would put in, maybe one or both of the back corners, some corner trapping. That's what I would do in my theater.
Okay.
I'd rather have a little extra corner trapping than not. That being said, if you said that this is what you were going to do and this is all you're going to do, I'd be like, you're doing a lot more than everybody else.
Right.
So you're doing fine.
Yeah, overall, I'm very much in agreement. Since you're making the panels yourself anyway, I might put a panel behind your center speaker, because we know the center speaker is going to be like the Pioneer Andrew Jones center speaker. So just so that all three of your front speakers have some absorption behind them, that would make sense to me. And that wouldn't be a huge, you're talking about one extra panel over what you already described. So and it could be that probably wouldn't be a printed panel, right? The one behind your center speaker, that'd be as plain as you could make it. So I would do that.
So Rob's specific equipment recommendations were pretty close to a lot of the items Greg already had in mind, so he was happy to hear that. What about my equipment recommendation? Oh, that's right, I didn't make it. He had initially budgeted more for the projector, so he'd be happy if the BenQ for 950 works out. He's never owned a projector before, and the talk about DLP rainbow scared him into considering Epson LCD projectors. Is a whole rainbow thing really nothing to worry about? Okay, I am going to say yes. It is nothing to worry about.
Yes, it is nothing to worry about. Okay.
Technically, there is a chance that you might be one of those people who sees it. I have seen oodles of DLP projectors. I have never seen a rainbow. Clint, when I was working with him, occasionally would say he could see rainbows, but he hadn't said that since like DLPs were first released.
Right.
So I am going to go out on a limb and say definitively it is nothing to worry about. But, keep your receipt.
So just to explain what the DLP rainbow thing is for anyone who might not be familiar, the way single chip DLP projectors like this one work is that they actually have a spinning color wheel that goes red, green, blue, red, green, blue, red, green, blue. So for the color of each frame, it sequences through red, green, blue. So it's actually flashing red, green, blue one after another, as opposed to having three individual panels or three individual subpixels like you would have on a flat panel showing those three colors simultaneously. It's actually sequencing them one after another using that one DLP panel to show you your red, green, blue in sequence for each frame. Now, if you only did red, green, blue for each frame once, that'd be called a one times color wheel. It's spinning only fast enough that you get the sequence of red, green, blue once for each frame. So 60 times a second, each frame is getting red, green, blue. Well, the HT2050A from BenQ is a 6 times color wheel. So you're getting the sequence of red, green, blue 6 times per frame, and that makes the likelihood of seeing rainbows exceedingly low. There will be some people who claim it, but I think they're just making it up.
I think they're tricking themselves. I think that
it's nigh impossible with a 6 times speed color wheel to ever see rainbows. So it's not that nobody could ever see DLP rainbows. At the very beginning, when they were 1 times color wheels, lots of people saw rainbows.
It's the same thing. I mean, hey, tell you what, dude. I hear you talk about screen door effect, which is what people used to complain about with LCDs.
They sure did.
So you don't seem to be worried about screen door effect. So if you're worried about rainbows, you got to be worried about screen door, in which case you can't buy either one of these. So.
But honestly, it's nothing to worry about with this particular BenQ HT2050 with a 6 times speed color wheel. Rainbows are nothing to worry about.
He knows that Epson does offer refurbished projectors from time to time. If he finds a great deal in a refurb model, should he consider that, or is it best to stay away from refurbished when it comes to projectors? As long as it's as it's got the factory warranty, it's an authorized dealer. I got no problems with refurbished. I just want to make sure that there's a brand new light bulb in there. Yeah, that's the one thing I'm.
And I want to make sure it doesn't have any stuck pixels. Because very often, again, like most refurbished things, it's probably a customer return, and they, like all displays that have individual pixels, they usually allow for a certain number of stuck or non-functioning pixels. You know, might be 3, might be 8, might be 15, whatever the number the manufacturer says, but they usually allow for some, and it can be annoying if you have a few stuck pixels. So I'm not super hyped, but given that you can get the HT 2050 for sure for $950 and probably less if you call these porters, there's not much incentive to me to go refurbished.
So he really preferred to wall mount his surround speaker, so he initially budgeted a bit more to get a pair of NHT Super Zeros, but Rob suggested a pair of Pioneer Andrew Jones bookshelf speakers to match his Pioneer towers and center. Can those be wall mounted? Maybe using wall mounts with a side clamp design, will they be a problem since they have a rear port? I mean, you can wall mount anything. Try hard enough. Okay, so the rear port, it's going to be basically firing into the wall is the concern there. I don't know that I'd be worried so much about it, to be honest with you. I mean, you could put a little bit of, you could actually wall mount, just put it on the shelf. I mean,
yes, yes,
put it just
make a little shelf. I mean, if you're handy enough to build a riser, you're handy enough to install a shelf.
Yeah, just that's all I would do. I put a little shelf. I put it up there. I get the orientation right, and if I was really worried about the port blowing into the wall back there, I take a little bit of insulation, little panel back behind it right there, and that'd be it. That would be it.
I agree, and I will also say I wouldn't even worry about it because your crossover is going to take care of that in your AV receiver. So no, this is nothing to worry about. If you really want a specific wall mount, then I think the side clamping design one works because the Pioneer Andrew Jones bookshelf speakers, they're not tiny physically. They're not super duper heavy.
And if you really want the NHTs, go for it.
Because he's working with a tight budget, so
they're gonna match just fine with the Pioneer Jones, I think.
Oh sure, as surrounds, that'd be no problem.
I wouldn't worry about that, but I mean, you don't have to. And plus, a shelf is a little piece of plywood with some paint on it, and a couple of brackets. It's like
I agree. If you're handy enough to do all this other DIY stuff, install a couple shelves on either side and put your bookshelves up there, and don't even worry about it.
He also looked at Elite screens and the Loon Vision options for the projector screen. Best Buy, East Porters, and Costco all have sales in the Loon Vision Lara fixed frame screens from time to time, bring their price down into the $300 to $400 range for the 120-inch side. Would that be worth it over the Elite screens model? This is a fixed frame.
Fixed frame.
And how far away is he sitting again? Do we remember?
I don't remember the exact distance, but we were looking between 120 and 135. But 135 starts to make it tough on his budget.
Right. So, I mean, I know the Loon Vision, we sometimes recommend those for people.
Well, I really like them for their acoustically transparent, and I really like them if you need an ambient light rejecting screen. I think they have the best ambient light rejecting screen, but it's expensive, and he doesn't need it here.
I mean, I don't think that they're any better. There's fixed frames are any better than.
But for the standard white, meh. 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
I'd go with whatever's cheapest.
Yep. Not only that, again, if you're handy enough to build a riser, I'm thinking you're handy enough to make a frame, because for $125 you can get the 135-inch screen material with a black backing from Amazon.ca. That's Elite Screen's version of their Cine White screen, but you can get just the screen fabric, and then you make your own frame for $175 once you include the cost of materials to make the frame. Can't beat that. And you can get the larger size. That's the way I'd lean. I'd go DIY on this screen, man.
So he really likes the Denon X3400H receiver B stock suggestion. He's really not looking to do an Atmos setup. Definitely not right now anyway. His wife really does not want him cutting holes in the ceiling, so in-ceiling speakers wouldn't be an option anyway. But if he ever decided to give Atmos a try, is there a cheap on-ceiling speaker we'd recommend? The Focal Little Birds aren't easy to get a hold of in Canada.
True.
On ceiling.
Mounted on the ceiling.
Well, cheap is harder to do because I was going to say that he was already looking at the NHTs, and those would be
Yes.
small and go up there very easily.
And not crazy expensive, but
I mean, that would be probably my first recommendation. I
Yeah.
would keep an eye out for sales on those guys.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's just Atmos.
honestly, if
Yeah.
he's going with an X3400H in his room size with the 2 rows of seats, I'd install surround backs before I'd install anything on the ceiling.
Yeah, go
Because you could actually benefit from surround backs in this setup. And keep in mind, 7.1 with no overhead speakers is still an Atmos configuration. It'll still move objects around you as long as you have 7.1. So that's kind of what I would do. And that's just another pair of Pioneer Andrew Jones bookshelf speakers on a shelf that you mount on your back wall yourself. That's what I would do. If you really want to do the ceiling thing, so normally for anyone who can't get Focal Little Birds, my suggestion is to get Kef's E301 satellite speakers because they're a similar form factor, but you can absolutely get them in Canada, but they're $350 for the pair, so that doesn't fit the cheap criteria.
Yeah. What about RBH? Don't they have those little satellite ones too? Do they ship to Canada? Don't they?
You got to pay all the shipping and border fees and crap like that. So yeah, it doesn't end up. I don't think they're selling their E series from RBH anymore. I think those went away. Now, I mean, you could go with like Andy's suggestion from a couple of weeks ago. Amazon sells the what is it? Acoustic Audio is the brand, and it's their AA321 tiny little stupid looking cube speakers for $50 in Canada. I don't know. I don't know if those are even worth $50. Andy was like, hey, they sound better than I expected them to. But I'm like, yeah, but you paid like $30 for them. So what were you expecting initially? Probably not much.
Probably not a lot.
So exceeding those expectations.
You were excited that they made noise at all.
It's all relative. Right. So, but honestly, I just go 7.1 if you're going to do more than 5.1 in here. That's what I would suggest.
Infinite Gary. In Gary's theater, he auditioned several different center speakers, including the Dynaudio Center from the same series as his front Dynaudio towers. In the end, he settled on a Revel Ultima Center. Why can I not talk today? And even though there are different brands, he finds the timbre matched in the overall cohesiveness to be excellent, and he did not arrive at that decision lightly. But the expert advice remains that you should always buy matching speakers, especially the front 3. Get 3 fronts in the center from the same brand and ideally from the same series. And even more ideal would be 3 truly identical speakers on the horizontal center paired with a vertical front, left, right. So seemingly he didn't end up following any of that expert advice. He's got a horizontal center from a different series and a different brand, and yet that is what got him the best results. So does he know better than the experts, or was this just an exception? It's not even, I'll be honest with you, dude, it's not even an exception. I have paired RBH center speakers with so many different other tower speakers and never had a problem. One exception was what was that speaker? I don't remember what speaker brand it was, but they weren't neutral. Right. They weren't more flat brand. They were going for a sound, and it did not pair well with. I think it might have been Elemental Designs. It did not pair well with the RBH. That was the only time I ever noticed a difference between them. Now, the reason why we say, and if I can tentatively lump myself up with these experts that you put in quotes in every one of your little things, is that the reason why we say this, because we know timbre matching will not be an issue if you get 3 speakers that are exactly the same. We are also more confident that your timbre matching is not going to be an issue if you get 3 from the same series, from the same manufacturer. We're pretty confident of that. We're less confident, but still feeling pretty good about you buying all of your speakers from the same manufacturer, even if they're not from the same series, because manufacturers tend to have speakers that sound similar. More similar than dissimilar. When you start mixing and matching brands, then it's the Wild Wild West, and we have no idea. Like, go out there and grab a Golden Ear center channel and throw it in here and see how that matches. And I'm not bashing Golden Ear. Golden Ear match just fine with other Golden Ear speakers. They just don't match well with necessarily the ones that you have. So saying that you're somehow bucked the trend or whatever, it's like going to your doctor and they tell you got to brush your teeth, or your dentist, you got to brush your teeth 3 times a day. I mean, you're not going to die. Your teeth aren't going to fall out of your head if you don't brush them 3 times a day. You should try to brush your teeth as often as possible, but it's a recommendation that they know works. I know what works. Well, we know what works when it comes to timbre matching in your front three speakers. Those are the ones you're most sensitive to. Those are the ones we're most concerned about. There's a lot of people, experts out there, that'll say you should timbre match all the way around. It's what Rob did in his theater, right? Because he
completely
knew
unnecessary behind me and above me.
Yeah, but he did it. He did it.
Yep.
But it's not necessary. And I mean, so saying that that there's some sort of exception, it's not. I think it's, especially as you get higher up in some of these speaker manufacturers, they're all going for accurate sound for the most part. There are some speaker manufacturers out there that are still trying to get their signature sound. B&W is probably one of them, Bang & Olufsen for sure. They're going for their specific sounds, but as you go up these lines, the speakers start to sound more similar than dissimilar. They just have different characteristics that you may or may not like. Aesthetics, how loud they can play, what their form factor is, these other things. So, I think you're doing fine, Gary. And the fact that you've got three speakers that sound good to you is the end of the discussion.
It really is. Yeah. No, I mean, just because, so for anyone who is trying to offer advice, and this certainly applies to us, I mean, we can't go into every specific scenario every time we answer a question. We're going to make generalizations, and anybody offering advice is going to do that, especially if it's just like on a panel or something, somebody's saying, okay, what's an important thing that not everybody thinks about? And they're going to go, oh, well, one thing is making sure that you have a nice timbre match across the front three, and one way to, have a higher likelihood of that is by getting, matching ones. Ideally, three identical ones, but if you can't do that, matching ones from the same series, from the same brand. Like, that's throwing out the advice in a way that is a generalization, but will far more often than not work out nicely. Right? It's not saying that you can never have a scenario where you don't have matching series from the same brand and it's going to be awful every time because of that. No, it's not. It's not that. It's not the reverse of that. It's a generalization versus a specific.
So he's been trying out various phono gear, so, record stuff. Naturally, that comes with reading lots of reviews and marketing speak. Those are the same things. Whenever you're talking about phono gear. But one thing that keeps cropping up is talking about details, where it's like extracting the finest details or retrieving details keep being used. So what exactly are these details that are being extracted or retrieved? This is the things that were scratched away by the needle. The things that you can hear very clearly on the CD because it didn't get scratched away by a needle. That's what it is, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, it is mostly marketing fluff. I mean, oftentimes...
Not just marketing fluff. It's just, this is a review. It needs to be about 3,000 words long. I need to write some more words. Here are some words that people like to read. Retrieving detail and
extracted the detail off of the vinyl record like no other phono cartridge could. That's why
because your needle is magic needle with unicorn horn.
Why you should spend $30,000 just on your cartridge. There's that kind of nonsense that's going on in the phono world. It's often either high frequency stuff that's common, or it's quiet things that are often masked by the inherent noise of a phono setup. And so if you can reduce the noise, if you can reduce the regular
I was going to say we should answer this question like this. Here you go. You answer the question, right?
Yeah. So yes, if you can reduce the noise, then you can hear details that would otherwise be masked by the inherent noise of spinning a vinyl record and having a needle physically scratch across its surface. Yeah. So details. Quiet things, higher frequencies, that's usually what they're talking about.
Try not to hear that. Or you can just play a CD. Up to you. All right, Ryan. Ryan is looking for a second option. Or no, opinion. I'm sorry. I read it first as opinion and went, I'm not going to get me this time. And then they got me. He purchased a Vizio P Series Quantum TV because it was less expensive than OLED, but a lot of reviews says it's and a lot of reviews say it's the best LCD TV for the money, with only the much more expensive flagship Samsungs and Sony's being a bit better. So he really wants to love it, but it's not OLED.
It is not.
He watches a ton of sports and a lot of movies and seeing some dirty screen effect, as well as one flaw that a lot of reviews point out, which is some fairly obvious color banding now and then. This is the same thing that bothered Lee, right? This TV purchase is meant to be to last a long time. He decided to return the Vizio Quantum and splurge on. Oh, wait a second. The color banding was the OLED that we were talking
Well,
about.
that's in the very, very dark. You can get some
Yeah.
vertical banding. In fact, you will get some vertical banding in the very, very dark of an OLED. But in the brighter section of the images, it's very uniform. Where this dirty screen effect comes from in LCDs is slightly uneven backlighting, which shows up mostly in the brightest images. And when you have a moving image that's very bright going across an LCD, you will notice this very slight variance in the backlight not being perfectly even, and that makes it look like your screen is a little bit dirty, is kind of what it looks like. So that's where that name dirty screen effect comes from. OLEDs don't have that. OLEDs have the reverse problem, where in the very, very darks, there will be some vertical streaks. It's unavoidable on OLEDs right now.
This TV purchase meant to last a long time, so he's decided to return the Vizio Quantum and splurge on an OLED, which is what he truly wanted in the first place. But now he needs to know exactly which model of OLED to get. Going back to review, Sony keeps getting praise for their motion handling and gradation smoothing, but the Sony OLEDs cost more than the LGs. On the LG side, the C8 is barely more expensive than the B8, and the C8 is supposed to offer gradation smoothing hidden within the MPEG noise reduction menu, of course. So which specific OLED should he get? I think it's the B7.
Oh, well, there's that. Yeah.
I think that's because we talked about this already. It's B7. But I mean, okay, so he should get an OLED, okay? Because
Yes.
I think in the end, it's what he wanted, and he will never be happy with LCD no matter what we say. But
And there's more than these. I mean, it's just it's that perfect black. When you're, he said, watch a lot of movies. I bet a lot of them have black bars. And on an OLED, those black bars are so black you cannot tell them apart from the extremely thin but black bezel. Like, you literally cannot tell the screen apart from the bezel. Whereas on LCDs, you'll always see that little bit of black bar above and below.
And I think he should get the OLED regardless. But especially when you're watching a lot of sports, unless you are watching it over the air, there's going to be issues with your sports. At least I have yet to have seen a sports broadcast that was either over satellite or cable. Now, I've never seen FiOS, so maybe you've got fiber optic, in which case maybe you are in the minority that gets really great bandwidth, and your grass doesn't look like it sparkles the whole time. But I cannot watch. I have such a hard time watching sports over on the cable network anymore because of how poorly it's compressed. So just because you get this new TV, do not think that your sports are suddenly going to look like looking through a window.
Right.
You
100%
still have other
pristine. Yeah.
you
There's
still
always
have
some
other issues.
Yeah, little artifacts. Yeah. Yeah. The Sonys, they certainly do get praise for the motion handling. I always end up turning it off because, I mean, as much as they say, oh, it's you have to turn on motion flow. That's Sony's name for it to get the thing. And all the reviews are like, oh, it's the minimal amount of soap opera effect. I'm like, yeah, but there's still some, and that still bothers me. Like, I still see it, so I end up always turning it off. So really, I actually agree with Tom. For most people, it's going to be a B7 because you can still get those, and they cost less, but they're from 2017. I would only go for the C8. So I wouldn't get a B8 over a B7 because they're identical,
Right.
even though they're different model years. So the only reason to go for a C8 is if you really, really want that gradient smoothing, and it is hidden underneath the MPEG noise reduction menu, but it does that. And if you really, really want the option of black frame insertion, because the C8s also do that. And that, if you're like, I've got to have the cleanest motion, then black frame insertion does that without introducing any soap opera effect. So if you really want those two features, I could justify a C8. Otherwise, yeah, get a B7 and save the money. There, that's our second opinion.
Nick is in a huge open floor plan, so he's going to upgrade to a pair of very high output subwoofers. He's happy to do the research on specific models himself using database.com. He's looking at the CEA 2010 measurements and whatnot. So specific model recommendation is not the request here. Instead, he's got some questions about Odyssey. He's come across claims that Odyssey might cut or boost as much as 9 dB within its EQ range. Is that correct? Is Odyssey's EQ potentially cutting or boosting plus or minus 9 dB? Um, first of all, did he say why he cares? Because I don't know why he cares. Why does
Well,
he
that's
care?
coming. It's coming up in a future question. Why he
Okay, well,
cares
I'll
about
let you answer
exactly
that.
how
I'll ask
much.
because I don't know the answer to this question. So I'll let you answer that, and then we'll get to the why he cares part because that's the part I care about.
Sure. So, Audioholics did an interview directly with Chris Kyriakakis, who is the founder of Odyssey. And in that interview, Chris Kyriakakis himself said they allow for a plus 9 decibel boost. That's the maximum. So the 9 decibel figure is correct. But they will allow for as much as a negative 20 decibel cut. So if you have a big peak somewhere in your room, it's allowed to cut as much as 20 decibels, but it'll never boost more than 9. So that's straight from the horse's mouth.
So within what frequency range is the EQ being applied? Could Odyssey boost as much as 9 dB all the way down to 20 hertz? Will it EQ below 20 hertz? Now, first of all, the fact that you can see how much they're allowing it to boost versus how much they're allowing it to cut shows you what they're more likely to do to begin with. Boosting is almost always about it. Just it's so rarely helpful.
Yeah, I mean, if you got small dips that are like the small dips might be because of the subwoofer itself. It's not a
Right.
room related issue. The subwoofer is just not perfectly linear,
Right.
and a small 2 decibel boost or something could get you back to linear. That no
And we've
problem
talked
with
about
that.
this multiple times, which is boosting a null or
Oh, that-
trying to boost within a room problem doesn't change anything. The more you boost it, the more it cancels itself out, and it doesn't do anything. So the boosts are to correct what the subwoofer is doing. The cuts are to correct what the room is doing. If you think of
That's
it that
one way
way.
to think of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I think of it. So caring about how much it's boosting or cutting,
But we have to admit, I mean, once you have when you take that measurement, it does attempt to make it as linear as it can. It will boost if it sees a dip in the frequency response. So we can't say that just because what we would do manually, right? We do have to admit it could be boosting as much as 9 decibels. So again, from that same interview, and this is a direct quote from Chris Kyriakakis, he says, Multi-EQ is capable of applying corrections from 10 hertz up to 24 kilohertz. So it can EQ below 20 hertz. However, during the measurement process, it first determines the roll-off points of each speaker and subwoofer, and it limits the correction below that point. So it's going to see how far your subwoofer can play down fairly linearly on its own. And once it says, oh, here's where it's, minus 3 dB or minus 6 dB, I'm not going to keep EQing below that point because it just can't keep playing anymore. That's the natural roll off of the speaker or subwoofer at that point.
So the last thing you want to do is try to boost up frequencies that can't play anyways.
Exactly,
It's just going to it's either going to make noise or damage the speaker. So
but if your sub can play flat all the way down to 10 hertz, it'll EQ all the way down to 10 hertz.
There you go. So if he looks for a subwoofer model that can play 9 dB louder than his desired output level, that will be ideal, correct? That way it could be set to output his desired SPL, and then even if Odyssey deems it necessary to boost as much as 9 dB at certain frequencies in order to achieve flat frequency response, he'd have the headroom available to do that, correct? I mean, how do you know what your desired output is? I mean, I guess
you can know.
you can figure it
what
out.
You like. Yep.
Yeah.
And he does. He's very into these figures.
I could see that. I mean, technically, I guess you are correct. I'm not.
Sure.
That math works out. So it's not going to boost any more than 9. So you want 9 dB of headroom from where you are sitting. So yes, that's correct.
Yeah, as stated, that is factually correct. I would not worry about it. I've never seen a subwoofer measured by database where, like, even if you send it a signal that it can't really handle, like, they all just kind of level it off.
Right.
I've never seen one that, like, well, I don't know. I guess it's possible. We have seen subwoofers bottom themselves out, but the type of subs you're talking about,
not the ones you're looking at.
Yeah, they're so well protected that
not the high output subwoofers. The subwoofers that bottom themselves out have 6-inch drivers and itty bitty cabinets, and it costs $100.
And if Odyssey is seeing a large enough dip that it's applying a 9 decibel boost, well, that's probably not just the subwoofer itself. That is probably a room problem, and boosting the signal probably isn't going to fix it. So you are correct as stated, but my real answer is I wouldn't be so concerned about it. It would be nice to have a little bit of headroom. It would be nice to not get a sub that can reach exactly the SPL level that you're trying to reach and has nothing extra at all.
I would be surprised if you could even find that anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. So having some headroom is good, but I wouldn't, like, for example, if you find a subwoofer that fits all of your criteria, but it only has 7 decibels extra headroom, like, I would not say, oh, I can't possibly get that because it's not 9. I wouldn't be that strict about it.
No, neither.
Yeah.
Different topic. He says, Rob has been talking up active HDR quite a bit over the last few weeks. You have?
I have.
And Nick has inferred that if a system has good dynamic tone mapping, where it basically ignores any HDR metadata and just analyzes the video signal itself and adjusts the tone mapping on the time in real time on the fly, that's just as good or maybe even better than the dynamic metadata HDR systems like Dolby Vision or HDR10 Plus. Is that all just theory, or is it based on real world experience? Have any professional reviewers checked this with side-by-side comparison? I am absolutely sure somebody has.
Yep. Vincent Dio has over at HGTV Test. And if you check out his most recent review of the Sony A9F Master Series OLED, he actually points out how, for whatever reason, the way that the A9F is handling Dolby Vision right now, it looks darker than it ought to. This is something that they're going to attempt to fix with a firmware update, but right now Dolby Vision looks darker than it should. Whereas the A9F uses Sony's version of dynamic tone mapping, where it'll take an HDR10 signal, ignore the metadata, just look at the signal on the fly and adjust itself, on a frame-by-frame basis. And he's like, yeah, that looks better. So if you have the opportunity at the moment, turn Dolby Vision off and just send the HDR10 signal. And I've looked at it myself on my B7 LG OLED, which has active HDR, in that case hidden underneath the dynamic contrast control, right. But there it is. And so when I'm backing up my Ultra HD Blu-rays, I only end up with HDR10, even if it's a Dolby Vision disc. There's no way to back up discs right now and retain the Dolby Vision on them. And I'm looking at those side by side, I'm like, you know what? I kind of prefer the TV just doing it itself.
Now,
it never ends up looking too dark that way.
I would say that for all you people in YouTube land who are watching this video in the future.
Oh, this could change.
This is not could change. I will pretty much guarantee you that, a year from now, maybe less, all these TVs are suddenly going to start doing this right. Right now, Dolby Vision and HDR10 and 10 Plus and all that stuff is brand new. So, they're trying to figure out their implementations. They're updating their firmware. They're doing all this stuff. And right now, it's a lot easier for them to basically bypass all that and just kind of do it manually because the TV knows what it can do. Right. Well, that's going to change. And it's going to get to the point where we're going to start recommending that you turn all that stuff off and you just let Dolby Vision do its Dolby Vision thing and HDR10 do its HDR10
The
thing.
theoretical advantage of Dolby Vision is that it's Dolby that's in charge of what that tone mapping curve should be.
Right.
It's not up to the manufacturers, whereas something like Active HDR, the way Sony does it is slightly different than the way LG does it because there's no standard for them to adhere to. They're like, this is how we've decided to actively tone map. That is up to the manufacturer. So theoretically, Dolby Vision should be more consistent. It's just that we have lots of real-world examples where it's not being implemented perfectly right now, and we're having to wait on not only the manufacturers to release firmware updates, but for Dolby to work with them to create the firmware updates in the first place, and there seems to be kind of a backlog on getting this stuff fixed.
And once this gets fixed, and all you people who are already pressed send on your "you guys are so stupid" comments on YouTube, we know. Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks.
Once we get to televisions that can just spit out 10,000 nits, you won't have to tone map anything at all.
That's right.
Yeah.
Just remember patreon.com/AVRant. All right. Josh wants a clearer understanding about how much greater the sound pressure level will be when adding more subwoofers in a room, and his research on the internet and in forums is only muddying the waters and making things more confusing. He's heard us say that adding a second subwoofer will increase the SPL by 3 dB. Other places we've said that increase the SPL by 6 dB, but further reading seems to indicate that you only get 6 dB if the two subwoofers are coupled, meaning they're basically stacked or directly side by side. But then even more research has suggested that the 6 dB coupling effect will take place as long as two subwoofers are within 1/4 of the wavelength of the sound wave being produced. So let's look at a 20 hertz, which has a wavelength around 56 feet. So it's a quarter wavelength is roughly 14 feet. So if you got two subwoofers in a room and they're quite far apart, but less than 14 feet, they'd be creating a 6 dB increase in the SPL down to 20 hertz due to this coupling effect. Is that correct? But when at higher frequencies, those shorter wavelengths, you might only get the 3 dB SPL increase versus 1 sub. Again, that's a question at the end. I just didn't state it as such. This is a Rob question. Yep.
Okay. So yes, we are once again, we're dealing with generalization versus very specific. Because so the real world answer is none of these numbers are ever going to be perfectly consistent.
We always say about 3 dB. Anyways, about 6 dB if you stack them.
Theoretically. Because even if your room is supposedly a perfect rectangle, it isn't, because nobody makes 100% flat walls, 100% square. And even if it were 100% and 100% flat, the consistency of the reflections off of whatever the surface of your wall is made of is not perfectly uniform. So we never get the exact theoretical results in the real world. So it's always going to be approximately, roughly. But as stated, yes, your information is correct. You will get a theoretical plus 6 decibel boost by stacking or having 2 subs side by side. And you are correct that as long as they are within 1/4 of the wavelength that they are both playing, that you should theoretically get this coupling effect. But all sorts of things can alter the real world results, because you can perfectly imagine a situation where you have 2 subwoofers, they're 6 feet apart. So they're some distance apart. They're not directly stacked or directly side by side, but they're 6 feet apart from each other, which means that for frequencies up to, I don't know, I didn't figure out exactly what wavelength that would be, but it'd be above 20 hertz, that you should have this coupling effect going on for all the frequencies that have a wavelength longer than 4 times 6 feet, longer than 24 feet. All the frequencies that are longer than 24 feet should get this coupling effect. But you can still end up with all sorts of wave interactions because you have 3 dimensions to your room, even in a perfect rectangle.
Right.
That's going to create up all kinds of wave interactions that are happening, and you're only in one spot where you're listening. So it's not as though all of those frequencies are going to arrive exactly plus 6 decibels versus what they were with just one subwoofer. You're going to have all this wave interaction going on. So theoretically, if you had no walls, this is what would happen, right? But you do have walls. So real world, you don't get this. So when you're trying to get into the specifics of how do I work out exactly how much I'm going to get, you end up having to measure, because it never comes down to what it would be if you were in a situation where you had no walls, because you do have walls.
All right.
Yeah. So it's a bit tough.
That distance you're talking about, that 14 feet, that's in a vacuum floating out in space.
Not a vacuum, but a wall-less scenario. You need air, because in a vacuum, you'd have no sound at all.
What I'm saying is that in a big empty space, like floating.
In a big empty space, yes.
Yeah, 14 feet away. But you're not, that if your room's 14 feet wide, and you've got them 14 feet away, there's a wall right there. It's immediately bouncing off of.
Exactly. Now you're getting a boundary reinforcement effect, which he's going to get into a little bit here as well. So figuring out the exact, it is complicated. Absolutely it's confusing, but the numbers you're specifying.
Yeah, but that's why we use this sort of shorthand of, if they're not on top of each other, it's 3 dB. If they are on top of it, it's 6 dB. It's not exactly that, because
at different frequencies, you will get different results, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to have the scenario where you have 2 subs across the room from each other. You're sitting in a particular seat, and at some frequency, you've got a big old hump still. Yeah. That can absolutely still happen even with the subwoofers across from each other. So that's not a plus 3 dB boost at that particular frequency. It could be way more than that. But we're saying in a generalized sense, if your subwoofers are not stacked on top of each other, if they're not quite close to each other, because we're talking about there's a lot of frequencies that are shorter wavelengths. If you're only thinking about 20 hertz, where the quarter wavelength is 14 feet, I mean, all the frequencies above that, and your sub is playing all the way up to 160 hertz, because even though it's a crossover, it's still playing up to 160 hertz. So you've got a lot of frequencies. So unless they're stacked or side by side, you're mostly going to be getting around plus 3 decibels if they're far apart from each other.
So, do I have to do this next one? Because it seems like we're just beating a dead horse. Just to be clear, in a large
Right.
room with two subs more than 14 feet apart, you'd only be getting a 3 dB increase versus one sub over the entire audible frequency range. I mean, yeah,
Yeah, again, in
yeah,
a general
in general.
sense, yes. Yeah.
So, reading up on room modes, he's come across the term modal range.
Hmm.
Is he understanding correctly that the modal range is unique for each room based on its dimension? He seems
Yes.
to explain that in a small room, there will actually be frequencies that are below the modal range, and that below the modal range, you'll get a SPL gain of 6 dB, while within the modal range, the SPL increase or decrease will vary. So, what does that mean? Two subs positioned within a quarter wavelength of the frequency is below the room's modal range will be getting a 12 dB SPL increase. I mean, this is what you're talking about right there is room modes, right?
Room
So
modes, yes.
just what Rob just said, you could be sitting there and getting not just 12, you could be getting even more than plus 12 at a
At some
seat
frequencies,
at some
yes. At the
frequencies.
resonant frequency of your room.
If you've got, let's say you have walls that are all factors of each other, so it's 12 feet wide, 24 feet long, and 6 feet tall,
Yes,
right?
there's this on top of it, yes.
Right, you put all that together and suddenly there's going to be some frequencies where you're going to be getting like every dimension of the room is going to give you a boost or a peak at that frequency. And it is going to be insane. Like you're going to cover your ears when you get to that frequency. You're going to think it's so bad. So it's so much more complicated than us being able to say yes or no to some of these questions that you've got.
Right.
Here.
I mean, that hence the confusion, right? Because
Yeah.
he's trying to distill it down to, I understand what the numbers will be. But I mean, our real answer is that in an actual room, you can never know 100% what the exact numbers are going to be across the entire audible frequency.
You have to know.
You have to measure it.
First, yeah. Okay. Let's say if you wanted to know for sure, it would have to be an empty room where you knew exactly the resonant, the exact dimensions. You would have to know exactly the composition of all the materials on the floor and the ceiling. And then you could program those with nothing other than the subwoofers in there. Then you could probably program it and say, I know for sure. Now, the minute you put a chair in there, it's different. The minute you put some room treatments in there, it's different. The minute that you start adding carpet, it's different. The minute you put popcorn on the ceiling, it's different. Like everything that you do to it is going to make a change. So when Rob says you can never know, it's not entirely true. You can know.
Okay.
If you build a steel box, I guarantee you there is a engineer out there that can tell you for sure, what exactly the dB boost will be at every single frequency based on the location of the subwoofers. But
this notion of the modal range, it's unique to the dimensions of each room, and figuring on a rectangular room, whatever is your longest dimension, take that and double it, and that would be the wavelength of the frequency that will create your primary room mode. So if you think about what's happening, right, imagine that the subwoofer is started with its driver drawn back into itself as far as it will ever be, right? So it begins to move out, which means the sound wave starts to move, and it's moving out, and it continues moving out and continues moving out, and once it reaches as far out as it will ever go, that's the exact moment when the sound wave reaches the wall of the room, right? So it bounces off of that wall and starts moving back at exactly the same time that the driver is moving back into itself. So the two of them are always in sync when the room is exactly half the length of the wavelength being produced. That creates your primary mode. Now, below that frequency, there is no scenario where it's going to be perfectly moving. I mean, until you get like so down into the infrasonic that there isn't anything there anymore. So that is now below the modal range, right? Now the movement of the driver is never going to be perfectly in sync with the bouncing of the sound wave once you're below that frequency. So yes, you can take whatever is the longest length, longest dimension of your room, double that. That's your frequency where you'll have your primary mode. And below that, you are below the modal range and into what we now call room gain. Because now you are always getting some additional sound hitting your eardrum that is due to reflections. You cannot escape it. You could put your sub embedded in the front wall and you could press your ear up against it, and no matter what you do, you will always end up getting hit by a reflected sound wave before one cycle of that wave has even completed. Because that's just the nature of it, which means you are always getting a boost, and that boost gets more and more and more the lower and lower you go in the frequency, because that's giving it more time to bounce back and forth before it's completed even one cycle of itself. So that is this room gain that we talk about, which is why sealed subs that begin to roll off at a higher frequency but placed in a small sealed room can benefit from this room gain and have more and more output the lower and lower that they play. But the exact number is going to be very difficult to determine.
So he says, can two lower output subwoofers end up having an equivalent output as one larger, higher output sub? For example, according to CEA 2010 measurements, the SVS PB2000 can output 103.8 dB at 20 hertz, while the PB4000 can output 112.3 dB at 20 hertz. So there's a difference. It's at 8.5 dB louder at 20. But if you positioned two, and it says PB2000, 4000, but I think it means 2000s.
Oh, yes. Yeah, sorry.
Two PB2000s within 14 feet of each other, would they only be 2.5 dB quieter at the 20 hertz than a single PB4000?
In a room with no walls.
Yeah, I was going to say, the minute that you add the walls, and then suddenly you've got room gain again. We're back to room gain.
You're back to room gain. You're back to interaction. I mean, remember, when I was talking about that whole modal thing, that only works in one dimension. You have to remember there's the other two dimensions of the room and the crosswise and angled reflections and all that. And once you actually see the real wave interaction in a room, it's not just that the sound wave went straight across the room and bounced back and didn't go in any other direction. All the other types of wave interactions that are going on. So yes, in a room with no walls, that is 100% true, the numbers that you just stated. In a room with walls, you might get significantly different results. And it could actually be, there is the scenario where two subwoofers playing a given frequency and you're at a certain seat in the room is quieter than one subwoofer.
Yeah, definitely.
That can happen because of all the wave interactions of all the dimensions.
And in fact,
all
a
the
lot
angles,
of times that's
all
what
the
we want to happen.
Sure.
That's the whole idea, is we're trying to get rid of those peaks.
Yeah,
all right, Rob.
That one huge mode, right? That's why you put the two subs in the middle of the walls across from each other, because they actually get rid of that one huge mode where it's just constantly doubling up on itself back and forth.
That's right. So, Rob, I gotta go. It's 12:30.
Okay.
So, do we want to end here, or are you gonna continue on by yourself?
Ooh, you'd let me continue on?
Well, I'm not gonna let you, but it's a little weird. You're talking to yourself.
Well, I'd be happy to, because we do have 16 questions on the list, so I'd love to hit two more if possible.
All right, knock yourself out. So
I will.
With that, I am out. Goodbye, people.
Wow, this is a first.
I know. I feel bad because we had two short podcasts in a row. This thing will not let me click on the window and go away.
Isn't it up at the top there? There's a little.
No, I have it. A Chrome has a bunch of open tabs, and then upgrade to Mac OS Mojave, because we would like to screw up everything on your computer.
Yes, we would.
Is up there, and I'm trying to hang up, but I can't hang up. All right, everybody.
I could eject you from the call if
that's
you can't.
All right. I got it. So, with that, I'm out. You guys have a great week, and I will see you guys next week.
Well, okay.
We're not getting. Tom. This is a one-time only thing, Rob.
I know. I get it.
All right. Bye.
There. I've ejected Tom from the call. That's not true. He hung up on himself. All right. Well, I will carry on then solo for. I think I'll try to get two more questions. So, Ted M. Ted wants to finally get his projector and screen. When he bought his 3 Legacy Silhouette on-wall speakers, and we've mentioned these several times, and I'll show the image in the completed video once again. He specifically got those with the idea that he would get an acoustically transparent projection screen, and that would be his setup. So he'd like that plan to finally come to fruition. This is still his 12-foot by 13.5-foot room, and he's thinking he will have the screen on one of the 12-foot walls instead of on one of the 13.5-foot walls, which is where he has his flat panel mounted right now. So he's going to rotate his setup about 90 degrees, make the room a little bit longer than it is wide. His budget is $5,000 to get both the projector and the acoustically transparent fixed frame screen, and as well as whatever he would need to mount mount that screen. And the room is fully light controlled, so he's not looking for ambient light rejecting or anything like that, but acoustically transparent for sure. So, what would we recommend as a nice combination for the screen size, the acoustic transparency, having excellent 4K and HDR image quality? He's fine with Wobble K, and have everything cost in total about $5,000 or less. He's saying it seems as though that JVC X790, which is going for about $4,000 right now, seems to be the popular choice, but would it be able to throw a large enough image in this small room size and hit all the other things that he wants? So, right off the bat, I will say that X790, also known as the RS540, that is absolutely what I would point you to. As we know, AV Science will apparently sell it for $3,800, so we've got about $1,200 to play with to get the screen, and that's absolutely what I would point you to. Let's figure out the screen size in here. Right now, he says he's sitting about 7.5 feet from eyes to screen, and he's got this... So we've got 2 rows of seats, but they're like right on top of each other. It's like a futon up on a riser behind another futon. Essentially no space between those two things, but he's okay with that setup now. And if he's willing to keep essentially that same seating setup, and from one of the other images, it does look as though the door to this room is on what would end up being his back wall on the left, so it'd be on the back wall on the left, I'm assuming is how he would set it up so that the screen could be on the full 12-foot wall on the other side. It does look as though that futon could fit, the back futon could fit beside the door. It might be a little off-center this way, but it looks like it would be able to fit beside the door, and he could keep the same, more or less, seating arrangement that he has now. So if in his 12-foot width right now, he's 7.5 feet away, here's what I'm thinking. First of all, he's going to need to have a false wall because he's going to have his Legacy Silhouette speakers mounted on one of the 12-foot walls, and you're going to have a false wall. And I'm going to assume that once that's all constructed, that false wall is going to have the screen itself being 1 foot in front of the physical front wall. So now instead of the room appearing to be 13.5 feet from front to back, it's going to be appearing to be 12.5 feet from front to back. Now, he should be able to keep this same seating arrangement and end up with an 8-foot distance from eyes to screen for that front row. That's what should work out if he kept the seating exactly what it is, but just rotated the room 90 degrees. So with an 8-foot seating distance, and he was like, he tried the going to an actual theater and counting the number of paces from the seat that he prefers up to the screen and then the number of paces across the screen. And he's like, he ended up with a 50-degree field of view, and he thought that couldn't be right. He figured the field of view would be smaller, but that's entirely possible. A 50-degree field of view in a full-size movie theater would not be out of place at all. As a preference, I tend to prefer about 45-degree field of view at home. And he was like, oh, he could get the projector first, throw it up onto just the wall, and make sure that he gets the screen size that he wants exactly. And that's exactly what I would recommend. But assuming that you're somewhere in this 45 to 50 degree field of view, which would be entirely reasonable for a projection setup, that's going to mean you want somewhere between a 92 and a 98 or so diagonal screen size, which is very, very doable. 92 is a common screen size, and 98 or 100 is also a common screen size. So that shouldn't be a problem, and that's going to be the screen size that I'm going to recommend to you. Now, I'm going to say go to Seymour AV because you are sitting about 8 feet from eyes to screen. You need their center stage ultra fine, acoustically transparent screen material. You got to go for the ultra fine when you're sitting that close. Really, no other acoustically transparent fabric is going to do. So that's a fairly easy answer. Now, you get it in the fixed frame. They have a couple of different frame options. They have their Premier fixed frame, which is their little bit more expensive one, and they have their Precision fixed frame, which is a little bit less expensive. And that's great because you can get their standard screen size that they start selling on their online store is 97.5 inches diagonally, which if you want a little bit more than a 45-degree field of view, already perfect. And in the Precision frame, the little bit less expensive one, it's $750. So $3,800 for the projector, $750 for the screen, or it's a little bit more expensive on the screen if you go for the Premiere frame, but I'm thinking the slightly narrower frame bezel would be kind of nice in this case anyway, because you don't want, be taking up all that space just with frame. So yeah, $750 or so is what you're looking at for the screen, and I'd probably go right for that 97.5 inch diagonal. It's $1,100 for the Premiere frame. I just looked it up. So even if you went with the more expensive frame, it would still sort of fit within this budget. And hopefully that's enough money to also construct your your false wall up front. That's going to be about 1 foot in front of your physical wall. So I think that covers all of that. He did ask, should he be thinking about constant image height? For your budget, that's really, you can't afford masking. Because if you're going to do constant image height, either with starting with a CinemaScope screen, which you would then mask the left and right sides to create a smaller 16:9 image, or starting with a 16:9 screen and then masking the top and bottom to create a CinemaScope image, either way, you need the masking, and you can't really fit that into your budget. Also, when you get this JVC projector, the black bars that it produces, they're not quite OLED black, but they're as black as any projector is going to get you, and I don't find them distracting at all, even without masking. So I think you're in good stead there. His last one was that he's worried whether the X790 is going to be able to throw the screen size that he wants within this room. Well, the projector itself is about 19 inches from front to back, and you're going to want to leave a little bit of room behind that for your cables and stuff. So call it 2 feet. Call it 2 feet from the wall behind the projector to the lens of the projector. And I would absolutely recommend that you just construct a shelf on your back wall way up high, because this projector has lots of zoom range and lots of lens shift. And that's the cheapest and easiest way to put this projector into your room. A shelf on your back wall up high. So that's going to give it a distance of 10.5 feet, we're going to say, because we've subtracted 1 foot from the front wall for your false wall and 2 feet from the back wall to where the lens is going to be. So now that's at 10.5 feet from the lens of the projector to the screen. And that X790 can throw an image anywhere between 51 and 103 inches when the lens is 10.5 feet away from the screen. So 98 inches, no problem. That all works out. All right, so last question for this week is going to be David, who wrote in on Twitter. David is asking on behalf of a friend of his, and it's actually the friend's dad who's getting this TV, so we're kind of like, fourth way down the line of giving advice. But he wants a recommendation for a television that is 80 inches or larger, but for under $4,000. It's also going to be going into a room that has lots of light, because there's a 10-foot tall wall of just windows, floor-to-ceiling windows, so he's got lots of light coming in. And he was kind of wondering, should he be concerned about edge lighting versus full-array local dimming at this price point for this size and this type of setup with lots of ambient light? That's less the question to me. Really what you're looking for is, you do want high light output, although again, I'm really not worried about that regardless of what you get. But a 77-inch OLED is, first of all, smaller than 80 inches and definitely more than $4,000. So OLED isn't even a consideration. We're definitely looking at LCDs here. I would try to get the one that has the very best anti-reflective screen coating that I can, and that would be from Samsung if you could get their Q8 FN. This year they have a tremendously good anti-reflective coating on the Q7, Q8, and Q9 series. Those 3 series at the top of their QLED range all got this really, really excellent anti-reflective coating on them. And the Q8 is the only one out of those 3 series, the Q7, Q8, and Q9, that has a screen size larger than 80 inches. It's 82 inches in the case of the QN82 Q8 FN. That's the full model number. Now, right this moment, the lowest I could find the price for a brand new Q8 FN in the 82-inch screen size was $4,300. You can definitely find it at $4,500. That's sort of the regular price right now. $4,300 is available. So could you spend $300 more than the full $4,000 budget to get that really excellent anti-reflective coating? It's a high brightness television as well. It can hit like 1,500 in its peak. And it's got the quantum dots, so you got the wide color and all of it. If you absolutely cannot stretch a budget, or I don't know if it's going to go on sale at all on Black Friday, usually the 82-inch models don't, because it's not common enough to go on a Black Friday sale. But if that's just too much money, then I would go to the Q6. So the Q6 is available in an 82-inch size. You still get the quantum dot. You still get the high brightness. You still get the full wide range of color. It doesn't have the same super duper good anti-reflective coating. Still got a good one, just not the tremendously good one that's available in the Q8. But now you can get it for $3,000 for sure, and the lowest price I found for brand new was $2,900. So you're definitely under $4,000 there. You will see a lot of people recommending the NU8000. To me, so it's available for even less. The NU8000 you can find down around $2,500. So that, of course, is attractive from a price perspective, but you lose the quantum dot, so it doesn't have the full wide color. It's not quite as bright. And most importantly, all of the QLED televisions from Samsung use their most advanced LCD panels with the highest native contrast on them. So the Q8 actually is full array local dimming. So that whole question of should you worry about edge lighting versus full array, probably not going to be a huge concern because the deepest black levels in a room with this much light is not really what you're worried about. But you're getting the full array local dimming, so you get the better uniformity of the screen if you can afford the Q8 plus that more important thing of the super duper good anti-reflective coating. But also the LCD panel itself in all of the QLEDs from Samsung has higher contrast than in all of their non-QLED models. And that's visible even with a lot of ambient light. So the NU8000, nice TV, definitely affordable, but the Q6 is certainly available for under $4,000. So if the Q8 is too expensive, I'd go for the Q6. All right. So that's going to be everyone for this week. On the list still, we have Samuel C., Alex, Christian S., and I believe it's Jorge S. I'm pretty sure that's how I pronounce that name. So yes, you gentlemen are on the list already for next week. Did get some questions that came in on Monday and Tuesday, so I received those by email, and you'll be on the topic list for next week as well. So we'll go back and thank our listeners of the week once again. If you would like your question answered on this podcast, please email us. That's question@avrant.com. By far the best way to get in touch with us. Please send your questions in there, question@avrant.com. And we want to thank Sam, who donated to us via our PayPal account. That's if you come to avrant.com, over on the right-hand side, there's a support the podcast button, take you to PayPal. So Sam, thanks very much for doing that. Also want to thank our 75 patrons. That's over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation. And we'd like to thank Jeff G., who took our advice, called up AV Science, and bought himself a JVC RS 540 projector. So congrats on that, and thanks for letting AV Science know that we recommended them to you. Yeah, so I believe that's going to be it for this week, and Tom already bid adieu, so on his behalf, this has been AV Rant. I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.